Okay, thank you for joining from close, from far. We're here in the days when it says that Jewish people, the Jewish nation, is too busy to do Averos, to do sins now. We're after Yom Kippur. We have a clean slate. Hashem has forgiven everything. We're starting off with a clean slate. And until Sukkot, everyone is busy building your sukkah, getting you to live in Esrei. And nowadays, of course, you're also busy doing your laundry because you can't do that during Sukkot. And no one has time to sin, to do any Averos now. People have very little time. And the 4 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Mike, thank you for joining. The 4 days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot also correspond to the 4 letters of Hashem's name, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. And today is the 11th of Tishrei. And it corresponds to the Yud of Hashem's name. Customarily, it's always been called God's Tag, God's Day, corresponding to the Yud of Hashem's name. From today until the end of the month, we don't say Tachnun. During davening as well. Every single day of these 4 days, there will be a special celebration because it's part of the Sheva Brachas, you could say, the 7 days of celebration of the Chanukah HaMikdash, the dedication of the first Beis HaMikdash by Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. The first Beis HaMikdash was dedicated on Ches Tishrei, the 8th of Tishrei. That Yom Kippur was 3 days within the dedication of the Beis HaMikdash, was the 7 days, the dedication of the Mizbeach. And that Yom Kippur, they did not fast. Jewish nation did not fast that year, and Hashem forgave all of their sins. Shlomo HaMelech, he brought thousands and thousands of korbanos, of sacrifices, to dedicate the Mizbeach. So these days, the days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, are days of dedication of the first Beis HaMikdash, Chanukah HaMikdash. So it's always a Yom Tov, a holiday, and we don't say Tachnun. Similar to the days of Hanukkah, which, true, it's a miracle of Hanukkah, but it's also the days of dedication when the Mishkan was completed on 25th of Elul, and we don't say Tachnun either on any of these days. So these are days of celebration, and of course, every Yom Tov, every holiday continues to be a celebration, a Yom Tov in the future as well, because the godly light which comes down on that time continues every year to come down. Just it comes down in greater power and greater strength than in the past. So now in the special days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, we learned in Mesechta that there was no greater holiday for the Jewish people than Yom Kippur. That's when many new shidduchim were made. As a matter of fact, even today, there's a study or a survey, or however you want to call it, that the most common Jewish birthday of Jewish from people is Yom Kippur and the day after Yom Kippur. It's the most common birthday.
Wow.
The most common birthday is Yom Kippur and the day after Yom Kippur.
When there's more people born on this?
Yeah, what they say has to do with a lot with the fast. With the effects of the fast. Causes a woman to give birth, but it's a day of a blessing, a day of Yom Tov. So we're holding here in the Gemara, Daf Yudches Amud Aleph, Mesechta Megillah, 18a. If you have the art scroll, it's 18a1. We are continuing the order of Shmoneh Esrei. So the last bracha we brought the order from was the blessing of V'Yerushalayim Ircha, and to Yerushalayim, your city, may it be speedily rebuilt. The next blessing was Et Semach David Abdecha, here's Atzmiach, may Hashem speedily bring forth David, your servant, raise his standard high. We spoke about the standard, the flag of Shlomo Malchai. For we hope for your deliverance every day. It doesn't say kol yom every day. It says kol hayom. What does that mean?
All day. day.
All the day, the entire day. We're saying a bracha that we don't just wait for Mashiach every day to come, like a checklist. I put on tefillin today, and I waited for Mashiach today. It's not a checklist. We make a bracha, a blessing with Hashem's name, saying, we hope for your deliverance the entire day. After that comes the next bracha, Shema Kulenu. Hashem, listen to our prayers. This is a general blessing, a general bracha. Anybody who has any request could ask of Hashem in this bracha, in this blessing. If you forgot to ask in a previous bracha and a previous blessing, you say it over here. Halachically, if we forgot different things in certain brachas, you can add it on over here. For example, the same Talamata Levracha, if you forgot to say it, you can add it on over here. Anenu, if you forgot to say, you could, Anenu, during Mincha, we say it here. The Chazan forgot to say it during Chazar Sashatz, he adds it on over here. When my grandfather, my mother's father, was not feeling well, and we used to daven with him, word for word, he would come to the words of Shema Kolenu, he would always stop, and sometimes 3 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes even 10 minutes, he would stop in the middle of Shema Kolenu, and he would be thinking, meaning asking his request, from Hashem. It's only something we got to see once he was sick. So during the bracha of Shema Kolenu, here our prayers is a very special time. You can ask for anything you want from Hashem.
How do you fit it in? Were you saying that? Where would you fit it in?
So you say Shema Kolenu Hashem Elokeinu, hear our voice, Hashem our God, accept our prayers with mercy and favor. Right before the words Kiyata, Kikel Shemei Tfilah, you are a God who listens to prayers and supplications. Do not turn us away empty-handed from your presence, our King. And over there you pause. Before the words Kiyata Shemei, for you listen to the prayers.
And you then verbalize anything you want?
Correct. Either verbalize or think about it, one or the other.
And in any language, right?
Correct. This is, you could say, the real original Shmoneh Esrei, which was daven to Hashem to the best of your ability. This was the original Shmoneh Esrei until came the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, and nobody was able to do it properly. So the Anshe Knesset Agdayla, the men of the Great Assembly, put a set version text for davening, which includes everything. But the original davening, which is pouring your heart out to Hashem for any needs that you have, it still exists and it still lasts in the bracha of Shema Kolenu.
And Rabbi Langer from the Kol had said actually that originally we were on a Medrega where we were able to express ourselves, like let's say the Chana, right? But then afterwards, actually, we lost actually that level. So the actually connected, like the Gilma, and as you say, actually set formula.
Correct. So this is bracha number 16 of Shmoneh Esrei. Why isn't bracha number 16? Why does this come after the previous blessing of Esamach David Avdecha, speedily bring back the seed of David to rule on the Jewish nation? This is 18a1, if you have your.
I don't today.
That's fine. So why is this bracha number 18? I have a small one, if that helps. 18a1, it's right at the beginning of the page. So says the Gemara, Kivan Sheba David, once David HaMelech comes, and that means that the Jewish nation, the representative of King David, which is Mashiach, will come and rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. What do we do in the Beis HaMikdash? Bring Korbanos and we daven. Basa tefillah. Then we daven to Hashem. So therefore, the order of brachas, the order of blessings, says Shemoneh Pekuli, is like this. First comes a bracha of Esamach David Avdecha Meir Zasmiach. Please bring Mashiach very quickly. And then comes the next bracha, Shema Kolenu. Listen to our prayers. What prayers? Shenemar, as it says, Vaviyosim al Kadshu. We said this pasuk perhaps over Yom Kippur. We said this perhaps 10 times. over Yom Kippur. 8 times, I would say. So says Hashem, I will bring them. This is from the Haftarah of a fast day that we say this. Hashem says that even the Jews in the future, when Mashiach comes, even the Jews who are far from Hashem, to the extent that they consider themselves to be foreigners, they walk in and they see what's happening over here. Like, this whole Yiddishkeit is foreign to me. Even they will switch over to love Hashem. Whoever, even those who transgress Shabbos wantonly, still Hashem will bring them close. What does Hashem say? I will bring them to my holy mountain, which is Har HaMoriah, the mountain where the Beis HaMikdash is. And I will make them joyful in my house of prayer. Can you imagine? Look to any Jew you know and tell them, are you happy going into shul and davening? Yeah, I know many Jews which their entire lives are davening, and they come into shul. It's not a time of joy. Some of them have to distract themselves to make themselves happy. And Hashem says, I will make you happy in the time when you daven. By the same, your karbanos will be acceptable to me. My altar, my house shall be a house of prayer for all the people. So when the Jewish people return to Hashem, return to Eretz Yisrael, not necessarily does it actually mean that David HaMelech doesn't mention David HaMelech, King David, in this verse. Rather, it refers to the Jews returning to Eretz Yisrael. But that happens with David. We will be Beis Tefilasi, a house of prayer. So therefore, bracha number 16, blessing number 16 is Shema Keleinu Hashem Elokeinu. Hashem, please listen to our voice. Accept our prayers with mercy and favor. So the idea of prayers is very connected to the idea of King David coming, David HaMelech, and Mashiach coming and rebuilding the Beis HaMikdash. And this is a very special tefillah. If somebody wants to accept upon themselves to fast the next day, they do it during this bracha, during this prayer of Shema Keleinu. And the word tefillah, we say over here, tefillah senu, our tefillahs comes from also the word hapikuli, which means tefillah, comes from the word paku pelilia, judgments, to remove harsh judgments from us. So therefore, that's bracha number 16 of Shmoneh Esrei. Once bracha number 16, if you look back at the verse which we just quoted, it says, I will bring them to my house, and they'll be joyful in my Beis Tefilasi, the house of my prayer. What's the next words of the pasuk? Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be acceptable on my mizbeach, on my altar. So the next thing we're asking for is our karbanos. In the Beis HaMikdash, we will pray and we'll bring sacrifices to Hashem, and let these sacrifices be acceptable to Hashem. The Zohar says that the malachim, the angels, first said the bracha Shema Keleinu when the Jews were in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, and they cried to heaven, they cried to Hashem, and it says Shema Keleinu, Hashem, hear our voice. At that point, the angels said this bracha, this blessing.
That's a funny thing for the angels to say. They don't have a voice.
What do you mean? The angels,
Yeah.
they don't have a voice, meaning what? They have a...
Literally, they don't speak.
Oh, no, they speak to Hashem,
Yeah.
right? Meaning, I guess they don't have a voice to us, on really to that we could hear them. But they definitely speak to Hashem.
Yeah.
We have many times angels cry to Hashem, Hashem, how could you let your Shema live? He's, look what his descendants are going to do. Hashem, how could you do this? Hashem, how could you be so cruel? We just had right now during the Avodah, on Yom Kippur, we had the 10 martyrs, And it says when they were killing Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, and they were, skinning off his skin of his face, and the angels cried to Hashem, Hashem, this is Torah and this is reward. How could you let such a chil Hashem happen? And it says, Hashem answered back to them, be quiet. If you say one more word, I'm going to destroy the world. Right? This is Hashem's experiment, and some things we just unfortunately cannot get.
And right now you're talking about, we were talking about as far as the angels, was this just the scene?
No, this is after Asara Harugim Malchus.
No.
No, what during the angels when they said Shema Keleinu?
Yeah.
This is while they're still in Egypt, right before Hashem brought the 10 plagues.
Oh.
It says Vayishma Hashem es nakasam, and Hashem heard their cries. And the angels are crying to Hashem, Hashem, please listen to the cries of Bnei Yisrael.
Because we have over here as far as actually Mesechta Megillah, so they should ministry angels, but if you recite a song of praise when the Egyptians were drowning in the Red Sea, Hashem said, and actually, how can you do it? So my father had read actually, it was either Rabbi Victor Emil or Rabbi Tessler, actually, that what it is that people are able to have mixed emotions. So we're able to, on one hand, feel, oh, Hashem's handiwork is in the sea, but the angels have like one thing.
Saying they're not able to, they're right.
And so Hashem said, no, but the Jews, who actually they were not, because as human beings were able to, on what and say, well, I mean, actually, the Egyptians have the potential to be different. Do we feel bad about that? I mean, then we feel so wonderful. Hashem saved us, we're going to have mixed emotions. But angels have like one mission at a time.
Interesting. There's a special, a very unique book from Mittel Rebbe. The Mittel Rebbe, he wrote so many different Sfarim Chassidus, and even the ones that we lost and were burnt, we still have so much from the Mittel Rebbe. But one of the very unique Sfarim, the Mittel Rebbe, it's more like a Kuntres, more like a pamphlet. It's called Pekeach Ivrim, opening the eyes. He wrote it for one person who became a Baal Tshuva. Long story. In the beginning of Pekeach Ivrim, maybe a 30-page long, 20-page long story about how this one person who went off the way of Torah mitzvahs, and it was one of the greatest Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe told him, for your neshama, it's better to become a wagon driver. And at the age of 70, he became a wagon driver, and everyone looked at him, you're the great mashpia, the great chassid, you're becoming a wagon driver, hanging out with the ruffians. The long story, he was still a great chassid, and he davened with kavana, he davened tikkun chatzos, and he came to a rest stop one day, and this person was once a from Jew, now was an assistant to local pirates, and he wanted him, I need you to take me at 5 o'clock in the morning somewhere. He spoke to him in Yiddish, says 5 o'clock in the morning, what about davening? Forget about davening. He says, davening, how could a Jew speak about like that? Forget about davening. He wanted to get a different wagon driver, but during the night, they had 2 rooms next to each other, and this Rabbi Yosef, he started saying tikkun chatzos, and he was crying his heart out, and Salman Gemetsky, the Jew from the next room, heard what's happening, someone crying, and he remembered his own father and his own grandfather, and how he was so close to, and how he was once in yeshiva, and how his friends, he had a friend who pulled him to the wrong path, and he ended up marrying a non-Jewish woman. He abandoned his Jewish wife and married a non-Jewish woman. Long story, he became about tshuva, and this Rabbi Yosef brought him back, and he became sick, and he almost was holding at the brink of death, and Rabbi Yosef stood by him until he became better, and he only had a full shalem, became completely better. He did such a strong tshuva, became so sick that his non-Jewish wife and children, they died in an accident. That's a highest level teshuva, because if someone brought a illegitimate child to the world, there's nothing they could do to fix it. Unless he do such a strong teshuva. When he told him that, he opened his eyes, he became better, he went back to his Jewish wife and children, and he became one of the chassidim of the Mittel Rebbe.
Oh, what is, does he abandon his Jewish wife and children? And he
married,
right.
Correct, and he became eventually a chassid of the Mittel Rebbe.
And so his non-Jewish wife and his non-Jewish children had she died
after he did teshuva.
Right.
Correct. So he came to the Mittel Rebbe. Mittel Rebbe led him more in the way of teshuva. But this sefer called Pekeach Ivrim, the Mittel Rebbe outlines a path of teshuva for how to return to Hashem. It's I think, the only sefer of the Mittler Rebbe written in Yiddish.
Mm.
Everything else is written in Hebrew. It's written in Yiddish because it was made for the common person to understand. It was written for the Solomon Gametsky. And so in there, he writes about the bracha, about Shema Keleinu. When someone says a bracha of Shema Keleinu, you should say it with as much kavanah as you could muster from the depths of your heart. You should have a feeling of bitterness and teshuvah. And if you think about your way you acted in your youth and the sins that a person has, you ask Hashem to please, Kabel Barachamim, have mercy and accept us to come back. During the year after the Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Zanchana, passed away on the 6th of Tishrei, which we mentioned, the Rebbe was chazan for the entire year. And many times during the bracha of Shema Keleinu, the Rebbe would become very emotional. The Rebbe would cry a lot during his bracha of Shema Keleinu. And they said during the bracha, we have a Chassidim would always say that's when the Rebbeim, the Rebbes, would think about different Yeshuas, Chassidim who need, or Jewish people who needed salvations from Hashem. And they saw that many times the Rebbe took different panim. Panim are notes, a supplication, kvitalach, that people wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe attached it with a paperclip to his siddur on the page of Shema Keleinu.
Oh.
Or there would be a list of names that the Rebbe himself would write down and then put it on this paper with Shema Keleinu. And the Rebbe would look at it during the bracha. So it's a very, very special bracha. Next blessing.
Was that Sefer translated in English?
What's Pakei Chivrim?
From Yiddish?
I'm sure it's translated into English, but I don't know exactly where and what. The story is definitely translated. Rabbi Yosef the Balagala, Rabbi Yosef the wagon driver.
And did he get released from being a rabbit? Wagon driver, I think I remember something like that.
Yeah, very good.
So that was his reason the Rebbe told him
To become, yeah. So he went to the Mittler Rebbe about 2 years after the Mittler Rebbe became Rebbe, and the Mittler Rebbe already moved to the town of Lubavitch, and he went with the Solomon Gametsky. He went with him together to Mittler Rebbe. He was a wagon driver, so he was driving people to Lubavitch. And the Mittler Rebbe told him, my father, the Alter Rebbe, came to me and told me that your shluchus was fulfilled, meaning the reason he became a wagon driver, the point was fulfilled. And now he pointed him to become a mashpia in a certain shul, in a certain city. You're going to become a mashpia there. And he was already close to 80, but for like the next 15 years, he lived a lot over 90, and he was a mashpia in the city. And the Mittler Rebbe always sent regards to him. He was one of the well-known great chassidim. When you think about it, how could it be? Look, you could say in a way how great our Rebbe is, or how giving our Rebbe is. In times of the Alter Rebbe, to make one Baal Tshuva, the Alter Rebbe took this great chassid, Rabbi Yosef, the Mashpia. He was age 70. He was one of the greatest Lamdanim Torah scholars, chassidim. And he sent him for 3 years or 4 years, however long it was, to become a wagon driver, to bring back 1 year to Yiddishkeit. And our Rebbe sends out shluchim, and many of the shluchim are nowhere close to the level of Rabbi Yosef. And Baruch Hashem, with the Rebbe's strength and koyach, able to bring back many Yidden to turn them to Yiddishkeit. Just so that, look how much goodness, you could say, the Rebbe gives to us.
Yeah.
The next bracha, Ritzei Hashem Elokeinu. Hashem, favor your people, Israel. Heed their prayer. Return the savor service of your sanctuary. And accept the fire offerings of Israel, meaning the carbon oil, burnt carbon. With love, accept it. May the service of your people Israel always find favor in your eyes. Then, of course, we say another bracha for Mashiach. May our eyes behold your return to Tzion, to Jerusalem, Beis Hamikdash, in mercy. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, Hashem, who returns his presence to Tzion. This is a bracha called Avodah. This is bracha number 17 of Shmoneh Esrei.
From over here, I guess we're saying that the Shechina is an exile, so shall we bring back the Shechina?
Correct. Now, in Shulchan Aruch, he says, what does it mean, the Isha Yisrael, and the fire offerings of Israel? Who does this refer to? Isha Yisrael. Shulchan Aruch says it's going on the souls of tzaddikim. It says Malach Michal, angel Michal in heaven. He brings the souls of tzaddikim, the souls of the righteous, as a korban, as a sacrifice to Hashem. What does that mean? Every day do tzaddikim die? Do the righteous people die? Means that they have great ava. Every day when you daven, you bring another korban, another sacrifice to Hashem. And they have tremendous love to Hashem, ava rabba, during davening, and this is what Michael, the angel, brings to Hashem. This is called Isha Yisrael. The burnt offerings, fire goes straight up, and these are the prayers of tzaddikim, which are done with tremendous excitement. It's called Isha Yisrael. Says the Gemara, once you have the blessing of Shema Keleinu, listen to our prayers. Prayers are only a introduction, so to speak, to Avodah, to the next blessing. Hashav Avodah, please bring back the service in the Beis Hamikdash. Shenemar, as it says, as we brought in this very verse, I will bring them to my house, which is, we said, that's going on, David HaMelech, and Samach David Avdecha. The next bracha is, they will be joyful in the house of prayer. That's a bracha of Shema Keleinu, here are our prayers. And the next bracha is, listen to their, accept their offerings. So the next bracha in Shmoneh Esrei says Shemina Pekuli is the bracha of Ritzei Hashem Elokeinu. Hashav Avodah, bring back the Avodah, the service in the Beis Hamikdash. Now the Kivin Shabbos Avodah, of course, in the middle of this bracha we say Yalav Yaveh, because Yalav Yaveh is connected with the idea of karbanos, to be a special karban which was brought on the Yerush Kodesh in the Beis Hamikdash. And the Gemara Mesechta Brachos, and also in Tosefta talks about Yalav Yaveh, why it comes where it comes. The Yalav Yaveh as well is part of the Beis Hamikdash. Once you have the next, the bracha of Avodah, the next bracha you have is Moedim Anachnu Lach, which is called Hoida'ah, thanks to Hashem. The Kivin Shabbos Avodah Basa Toida. Once you have service in the Beis Hamikdash, and then you brought a karban. After karbanis, you have Toida, thanks to Hashem. There's another version of the Gemara which changes the word to Hoidaya, which means vidoy, confession to Hashem. Shenemar, as it says, we say in Tehillim, Zeveach Toida Yichabdanani. Whoever offers a sacrifice of thanksgiving to Hashem honors me. And to order his way aright, I will show him the salvation of Hashem. So after Zvicha Zivbeach is bringing a karban, then comes Toida. Toida means thanks. So we offer thanks to Hashem. And that's the next bracha, the next blessing, which is Moedim Anachnu Lach. We thank you, thankfully acknowledge you, Hashem. Of course, one must bow down during the bracha of Moedim. And therefore, Moedim is next to Ritzei. After you bring a Zevach, a karban, you bring Toida, a thanks to Hashem. According to the Marsha, which he says the word Toida comes from the word Vidoy. Vidoy means confession. Confession is also part of a karban, as Rashi says on this pasuk in Tehillim, Zaveach Toida Yichabdanani. He says that Toida means Toideh, not Toda, which means thanks with a comma, but Todeh with a segel. Todeh means admit. Todeh. Say Vidoy.
Yeah, I actually wrote it to you. Read it.
That's right.
Yeah. I do owe you $5.
Not just $5.
$1 million.
There's more explanations. It says V'sham derech. The Medrash says over here, V'sham comes. V'sham, you estimate. This person always makes a cheshbon, a calculation, how we could fix my ways. So therefore, the bracha of Moedim, I thank you, comes after the bracha of Zavech Kodei Chabdanani, of the bracha of Ritzei Hashem Elokeinu. May Hashem accept our prayers. And someone who brings a carbon must say Vidoy, a confession to Hashem. Now, let's continue with the next bracha to move along in the Gemara. But there's two parts of the bracha of Moedim. One bracha of Moedim is we thankfully acknowledge you. That's what the Chazan says out loud. There's also a Moedim derabanan, in Moedim for those who are listening to the Chazan, which is not said out loud. It's only said quietly by the people which are listening to the Chazan, because it explains there's two different types of hoida'ah, of acknowledging Hashem. And the Chazan out loud, we can only reach one level of acknowledgement, but individually, every person could reach and could attain a higher level of acknowledgement of Hashem. During Moedim, there's a big difference in different nusachs. We say Hamerachim, Hatoiv, the good one, Kilechol Rachamecha, your mercies have not ceased. Hamerachim, the merciful one. Do we say Vihamerachim and the merciful one, or Hamerachim? So most other nusachs say Vihamerachim and the merciful one. The nusach Ari, the way we do it is that on a weekday we say Hamerachim without a vav, and we add a vav only when you don't say 18 brachas. Like for example, Shabbos, Yom Tov, or Musaf on Rosh Chodesh, then we add a vav, Vihamerachim. The vav is coming to sort of bring in all the brachas, all the middle blessings which we were missing when we're not davening the long brachas, then we add the vav. So we only add it, the vav, Vihamerachim, we only add that when we don't daven 18 brachas, the full Shmoneh Esrei. The Rebbe himself, and this was the other Rebbeim too, they would say that Vihamerachim anytime we don't say Tachnun.
Oh,
You could hear that clearly when the Rebbe was Chazan, but that the Rebbe said this is something which is unique to the Rebbeim. It's not for everybody else.
I see.
But for Nusach Ari, we only say Vihamerachim and the merciful one when we don't say 18 brachas of Shmoneh Esrei.
So actually, the Lubavitch Rebbe did not daven the exact same nusach as the Hasidim exactly then, right?
No, he davened the same nusach, but he changed one or two things
Oh,
for himself. But every single word and letter here is extremely important. V'al nishmeseinu, right? There's a certain cheshbon, there's a calculation how many vavs you're supposed to have. V'al nefesecha, v'toy v'secha, right? Vav boker, v'tzarayim, v'al nisa. There's a certain amount of vavs you're supposed to have. And every one of these vavs, v'al kulam, v'yisurim, v'yisnase, v'chol l'chayim, v'halalu, v'ezreseinu, right? There's a certain amount of vavs you're supposed to have in order to make up, I think 12 vavs to make up the missing brachas of Shmoneh Esrei. So therefore, we add v'hamerachim at those times. Right, so there's a certain, there's a reasoning why we say it like this and like that. So therefore, Nusach Ari is different than other Nusachs. There's also different opinions. Why we have 18 brachas in Shmoneh Esrei? Remember we brought the Gemara Mesechta brachas. Is it because we're going after how many times it says Hashem's name in Shema? How many times it says the word kol, voice, in chapter 29 of Tehillim? Or how many chulyas, how many vertebrae in the spine? So according to the Arizal, right, he doesn't count Shema Yisrael, Hashem Echad. He goes after, each one has a different reasoning where they go to, and the vavs make up the missing brachas. Anyway, so everything does have reasons according to Kabbalah, and so therefore, it's very important that if you have a nusach, to be very exact in the wording of the nusach that you have. Reb Hillel Paracher was, of course, by all means, a great makubal. He explained about the difference of Shabbos and Yom Tif. The Frierdiker Rebbe says the Rebbe Rashab would say a vav v'ya merachem anytime in mistachnun, but he would try swallowing up the vav that people shouldn't notice. But this is something which is only shaykh to the Rebbeim. Let's finish up the last three brachas of Shmoneh Esrei and the Gemara, and then hopefully we'll have some time to go through some Kuntres Umaayon. This should still be, it should be in the second column. How come they added Birchus Kohanim to Chazar Sashatz, to the repeating of Shmoneh Esrei? He said, Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, Hatoy Shimcha, your name is great, Ulecha Na'el L'hodos, and to you it is fitting to offer thanks. Previous one. There's between these two brachas, we have Birchas Kohanim. Elkeinu Elokei Avosenu. Hashem, please give us the bracha of Kohanim, and in Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim every single day they do Birchas Kohanim. In the rest of Eretz Yisrael, it's only on Shabbos, and in Chutz La'aretz we only do it on Yom Tif. Where the Kohanim get up in front of the shul and give Birchas Kohanim.
Where did you say they do it only on Shabbos?
The rest of Eretz Yisrael.
Outside of what?
Outside Yerushalayim. In Yerushalayim, they do it every single day. The rest of Eretz Yisrael, they do it on Shabbos. And outside of Eretz Yisrael, we do it only on Yom Tiv. The Kohanim get up. But during Shacharis, we have the Birchas Kohanim, the blessing of Kohanim. We don't do it by Mincha, because during the day, people would eat a meal, and it was common then, people wouldn't drink water by the meal. They would drink wine. Many reasons. Probably the most common reason was water was hard to come by. Water was also very unsanitary. There's a town, maybe about 40 minutes from here. It's an old town, old pioneer town called Hannesville. And I went there once with my kids for a tour. And so one of the places we went to was the local brewery. Everyone had one it seems like in their backyard, but it was a normal thing for even children to drink lots of beer. It says because the water that they would take from the well, people would get sick from drinking the water. But the beer, they wouldn't get sick.
Why did they just boil the water?
Why didn't they, I don't know, why didn't they have cars back then?
Probably didn't realize even that.
But the water from beer is brewed, it's boiled, it's fermented, so it killed all the germs. So even young children, for 6 or 7, 8 years old, will be drinking beer for breakfast.
Because it was
The Czechoslovakia too.
all you have to do is actually boil water, and then actually put it inside the fridge and have it become cold. Oh yeah, they didn't have refrigerators.
They didn't know that boiling killed the germs.
Kohen is not allowed to bless after having drunken any bit of wine. If you drink more than revius, more than 3 ounces of wine, so then they receive kares. If the punishment of kares, if they bless the Jewish people in the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, in the daytime meal, the Kohen must probably drink wine. So by mincha, we don't say Birchas Kohanim, except for on a fast day. Which on a fast day, they can't drink any wine. So then we do Birchas Kohanim also by mincha.
However, on Yom Kippur we didn't do that, right?
On Yom Kippur, we had it by Ne'ilah. We do Birchas Kohanim.
Okay, but as far as actually having Kohanim though.
So in Yerushalayim, they actually do it by Ne'ilah as well. A Kohanim go up in front of the shul again. By mincha, I'm not so sure. So why is this put in over here in Shmoneh Esrei? Right over here at this point, where the Kohanim get up and bless the Jews. So if we just think about it logically, the order makes sense. You come back to Eretz Yisrael, you go to the Beis HaMikdash and pray. You bring korbanos, these are the brachas that we're saying. Then we thank Hashem or say vido in the bracha of moedim. And what's the next service in the Beis HaMikdash? Birchas Kohanim. The Kohanim would stand on a duchen, on a stand in the Beis HaMikdash, and they would bless the people. So the next bracha, the next part of Shmoneh Esrei is Birchas Kohanim. But logically, it makes sense. Shimon HaPekuli also brings a source for this. What does he say? How come the blessing of the Kohanim is after the bracha of Modim Enachnu Lach? We thank you, Hashem. Says the Gemara, as it is written, Vayisa Aharon es Yadav Ela'am Vayivarachim. This is by the dedication of the Beis HaMikdash, of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle in the desert. And it says over here, Aaron lifted up his hands toward the people and he blessed them. Vayered, and he went down. From bringing all the different sacrifices in the Mishkan, to dedicate the Mishkan, to dedicate the tabernacle in the desert. So what came first? Blessing the people or bringing Karbanis? Obviously, what came first was bringing Karbanis, because it says, and he came down from bringing the Karbanis. So he blessed them and he went down from bringing the Karbanis. He was in the middle of bringing Karbanis, and then he went down from blessing them. So therefore, from this verse, we see that after the blessing, after the bringing of Karbanis, Kohanim bless the people. And that's why we have Birchas Kohanim right after the bracha of Baruch Elohai, blessed are you, Hashem. Thanking Hashem. So after finishing to do a Karban, the Kohanim should bless the people. Says the Gemara. Gemara asks, Eima koivim avoida. The verse mentions that Aharon, first it mentions Aaron blessing the people, then it mentions Karbanis. Right? Seemingly it should be the other way around. And the Gemara answers what we said. It says he went down from bringing their Karbanis. Gemara answers, it says he went down from sacrificing in order to bless the people. Meaning first he was bringing a Karban, and then he went to bless the people. So therefore, first we say Moedim, and after we say Baruch Elohai, the end of that blessing, do we go to Birchas Kohanim, the blessing of the Kohanim. Ask the Gemara of Lemer Achar Avoda, why don't we say Birchas Kohanim after the previous blessing? Say it after Baruch Elohai, right after Modim. Or say it even previously. Say it right after Baruch Atah Hashem Hamach Shechina Selotzi, and blessed are you Hashem, it brings your Shechina back to Zion, and then say Birchas Kohanim. Say it before Moedim. More answers Lo Yisrael Kadaitach. The Chsiv Zevech Toida. My Chos is the Sam Kasahai Smay Kahai Mitztabra Avoda Voda Achad Milsahi. So Gemara says, no, we have to. There's a certain order. Remember, we said that the pasuk, the verse in Tehillim says, "Ve'ach," you bring a karban of thank to Hashem, then toida, then you thank Hashem, or toida, you say videi to Hashem. So the bracha of Shema Kaleinu has to be next to the bracha of Moedim, because one is a bracha. The bracha of Ritzei, Hashem, bring us back to our karbanas, has to be next to Moedim, which thanking Hashem. And after that comes the bracha of, after Moedim, which thanking Hashem, comes Birchas Kohanim. And it says, Mistabra, says the Gemara, Avoida Voida Chad Milsahi. Logically, reasoning is thanking Hashem and serving Hashem are conceptually the same thing. Vidoi, confession, or Hoida, thanking Hashem, both of them are types of service to Hashem. So, therefore, it's logical to say that when the Gemara said earlier that first comes the bracha of Ritzei, of Avoda, serving Hashem in the Beis HaMikdash, then Toida, then thanking Hashem, that should go together. Birchas Kohanim is neither serving Hashem nor is it thanking Hashem, nor is it saying vidoy. So it makes sense that should come after. It's a different category, it's a different type of service of Hashem. Birchas Kohanim, the blessing of the Kohanim, is bringing blessings to the Jews. It's not serving Hashem. It's not thanking Hashem. It's not saying vidoy. So therefore, group together the two types of service of Hashem, which is karbanos and the bracha of ritzei, and vidoy or toida, thanking Hashem, and confession in the bracha of moedim, and then do birchas kohanim, which is a different type of service of Hashem. So therefore, therefore it is separated, and therefore this is right between the 18th bracha and the 19th bracha. We say the bracha of birchas kohanim. Continues the Gemara. What's the last bracha of Shmoneh Esrei?
I swear,
Shalom Rav or Sim Shalom.
Yeah.
What's the end of Birchas Kohanim? The last bracha of Birchas Kohanim. Yisa Hashem panav elecha, may Hashem lift up His face to you, v'yasin lecha,
Shalom.
and give you peace. Right? Baruch Hashem, someone who is part of our shir made a special mishaberach and yamtiv for shalom, for peace. Hashem. Shalom is the end of Birchas Kohanim, the last bracha of the blessing of Kohanim, as well as the end of the entire Shmoneh Esrei. Shalom, peace. Says the Gemara, Umar ra'u loymar sim shalom achar birchas kohanim. After the blessing of Kohanim, we have the last bracha is sim shalom, place peace upon us. Why is that the last bracha of Shmoneh Esrei? Well, we know the importance and the specialty of peace. Right? It says, the Alter Rebbe brings down, we know Achav, the king, he was a very evil, wicked person, but his soldiers were successful and protected. Why? Because they had shalom, they had peace between each other. Even if people are sinners, if they have shalom, they have peace and get along with each other, Hashem will protect them. We say during the bracha, Barcheinu Avinu Kulanu Ka'echad. Hashem bless us, our Father, as one. When will He bless us? It says in chapter 32 of Tanya, when we're all one. A father obviously is happy when he sees his children getting along with each other. You want the pnimius, the inner part of Hashem, that is through shalom, through peace. Torah's chayim, a living Torah, avas chesed, and a love of kindness. To have Hashem rest in us is only through shalom. And we end off the last words of Shmoneh Esrei, Baruch atah Hashem, and Baruch es Am Yisrael b'shalom. Blessed are you, Hashem, who blesses His Jewish nation with peace. Says the Gemara, why is the end of the last bracha of Shmoneh Esrei sim shalom? Says the Gemara, the end of the blessing of the Kohanim is, I will place my name on the Jewish on the Jewish nation, v'ani avarechim, and I will bless them and the Kohanim. Bracha d'Kadosh Baruch Hu shalom. The blessing of Hashem is peace. Shenemar, as it says, Hashem yivarech es amay. Hashem will bless His nation with peace. So the true peace is Hashem will bless the nation with peace, and it says in Parshas V'chukosev, in Asati Shalom Ba'aretz, I will place peace in the land. And this is the blessing of Shalom that Hashem says, I will bring peace in the land. It happens because the Malachim, the angels, praised Hashem when the Jewish people came into the land of Eretz Yisrael. And during the time of Shlomo HaMelech, there was Shalom, there was peace in the land. And that's when the Malachim, the angels, said the bracha to Hashem of Sim Shalom, and that's what the original institution of Sim Shalom. So that's a bracha of peace, of Barcheinu Avinu, bless us all, Be'or Panecha, in your light of your light, in Hashem's light. There was, yeah.
The blessing of the Kohanim, could it mean also that Hashem will bless The Kohanim?
Yeah, right. The Rashi brings both explanations, right? One is that I will bless the Jewish people through the Kohanim. And then he says, if the Kohanim do their obligation of blessing the Jewish people, I will bless the Kohanim themselves. Right. We mention Torah during this bracha because Torah brings peace to the world. And when we say a bracha, a blessing, we say Hashem's name. So the idea of saying Hashem's name is very serious. We don't do what's called the bracha levatala, a bracha in vain, mentioning Hashem's name in vain. There was a bracha brings down a promise, brings down godliness from Hashem. One of in the letter of the Rebbe to someone who says that they were going through difficulties in their marriage and they wanted to get divorced. They didn't have children already for many years, and the Rebbe says, God forbid to separate over not having children, and you received a bracha for your wedding from the Frierdiker Rebbe. So for sure, if you received a bracha from the Frierdiker Rebbe, then it will definitely be fulfilled. Especially a bracha was made with Hashem's name by your wedding, by the chuppah. So a bracha brings down new light. It's something that didn't exist even before. There was there's shluchim now in Riverdale, New York, Shem Tov's. Her father, she's a Feldman from the house. Her father is Dr. Feldman, a doctor by the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin, doctor in Crown Heights. I think he passed away a year or two ago. And when she got engaged, was Rebbitzin Chaim Mushka, she was still living, and her father was a doctor, Rebbitzin Chaim Mushka. The Rebbitzin wouldn't just look at doctors as professionals, but as friends. Mm-hmm. She says, your daughter, she says, let the chassan come and let the kala come, let them visit me. And
this was actually
the Lubavitcher Rebbe's wife. Yeah. And she said, and they came to visit her, and this was very shortly before they passed away, maybe about a week before she passed away. And they visited her, and she says, I'm so happy who you're engaged to. The last name was Shem Tov, because I know them from a long time, and you're going to speak Yiddish to your kids. And they got engaged, and they actually, the Rebbe Chaim Mushka passed away the day that they were supposed to have an engagement, the L'chaim. They wanted to cancel it, and the Rebbe said that they shouldn't cancel it, and they should make music. The Rebbe says this is what the Rebbitzin would have wanted. And they were married for many years, and they don't have any children. But they never were worried that they're not going to have children. They said, because the Rebbitzin told us that I'm so happy for your engagement because you're going to speak Yiddish to your children. Oh, yeah. The Rebbitzin said that, we have nothing to worry about.
And so eventually should they let it up?
Doctors told them you should look into adoption because you're never going to have children. And they refused. They said, if the Rebbitzin told us we're going to speak Yiddish to our children, right, that's what's going to happen. And many, many years, I think 20 years after the wedding, actually, Baruch Hashem they had twins. Twins, I think 20 years after the wedding. And then another child after that.
And then afterwards, if they want to adopt, actually, but so usually the first thing is people want to have it natural, and then afterwards, like to adapt.
So that's the idea of a bracha, a blessing. We say Yiratzim Lefanecha, may be your will. But even if there isn't decided, even if it's decided that we do not deserve it, but Yiratzim, there should be a new desire, such a thing should happen. So thank you so much.